All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Here with your host, Richard Fu from richardfu.com. And I have a brave warrior on the show tonight. Her name is Ann Peterson. She is the podcast host of Naked Bravery. She helps people thread through life to really highlight the heroism within each and every one of us. And most of all, she's also a singer, songwriter, and creator as well. She's an amazing soul. I've had such a great pleasure to chat to her before we even get started. And I'm excited to have her on the show because she's going to share with us the little tidbits that she's learned through interviewing so many brave souls and sharing it as well through her TEDx talk. And of course, I'm excited to bring her on the show here, guys. So please welcome Emily onto the show. Emily, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Emily, it's a pleasure, and I'm excited to have you on because, so many of us struggle with bravery, and I want to talk about your experience with bravery because I know you've gone through a lot of things in your own life, and that I guess that's helped you start off this podcast. And so share us a bit more about your own brave story and how that's translated over into what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. So I think about 4 years ago, or I should say about 5 years ago, I was a full-time cello teacher. I play the cello. It's my most proficient instrument. And then about 4 years ago, just as I was preparing to go to an artist residency for about 6 to 8 weeks, I was diagnosed with a hand tremor in my right hand, which put everything on a screeching halt. So I spent those 6 to 8 weeks like sulking in the mountains. Instead of recording the cello album that I had intended on recording, I spent the time sulking and actually left the mountains with a bunch of songs on keyboard and didn't touch the cello at all while I was out there because I was just in grief and in pain and not physical pain, just emotional pain from the bad news that my relationship with the cello would be very different from then on out. So, that experience really got me curious about this subject of bravery, specifically creative courage. Like, what does it mean to be, not to have the courage to create, but what does it mean to be creatively courageous? And what does it mean to do things in a new way? And I started writing this book about it, using my experiences and using just some other research and knowledge that I know just from life, And I wrote that book, started writing that book. And then as I was doing, the research phase by like talking about it with other people, I started to realize, wow, these conversations are really good and really juicy. And I knew that I was not the only person that should be listening to them. So I started a podcast about it all. So the podcast is called Naked Bravery. Yeah. And we just started, but we've already booked out for the rest of the year for all the episodes. So we have had neuropsychologists. We've had a lot of my fellow singer-songwriter friends from the Pacific Northwest area, and also from Nashville, a bunch of authors and everything. And everybody, I've noticed everyone has a really unique perspective of bravery, either a unique experience of bravery and courage, or an expertise that really shines a light on a new area of bravery and courage that we don't really talk about a lot. So it's been a really fascinating process.
Wow. And talk us through this. You said this phrase here, I think it was like creatively courageous, right? What does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, I've had someone come up to me at a speaking engagement this was a couple months ago, and she said, "Oh yeah, I just really need to have more courage to be creative." And I was like, you totally missed the point. Because it's not about being creative. I mean, one of the facets of this is that creativity and courage is a cycle, in my opinion. And it starts out a really small cycle. You have to do something courageous usually means to do something out of the box, to do something uniquely, to do something that no one else has done, or to like swim upstream and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to have courage. So you have to have courage to create, and then you have to have creativity in order to be courageous. And so it leans on itself, and it creates this spiral. The more you practice courage and the more you practice creativity, you get your muscles to create and be courageous and be brave. They get stronger, and you're able to do more and be more and do bigger feats of strength and bravery and creativity as you keep practicing. So I think a lot of this is built on really small methods of practicing courage, creativity, and how to use your fear.
I think I'm getting it now, because as you draw that circle, I see that, you have to have that courage first to take that first step. Yeah. And when you're in that courage zone, it's like, most people pull back because it's like, oh, I don't know what to do, or I don't know exact step. But that's where the creativity comes from, is what you're saying. The creativity comes in to say, okay, I can't do it this way. How else can I do it? What other ways are for me to make this happen? Is that correct?
It's totally correct. Yes, yes. And it is a spiral. I think a lot of people see, let's take, for instance, they see somebody on a really big stage or speaking engagement, or they see somebody who's made $1 million, or they see somebody who has just like quit their day job and have done something really brave.
Mm-hmm.
But those moments, like, people don't wake up and make $1 million. Mm-hmm. And people don't wake up and just quit their day job out of the blue. Mm-hmm. The bravery that we see on the outside is often a false interpretation of what is actually happening on the inside of somebody. Right. On the inside, the person who is the one who is brave never feels brave.
Yes.
And the one who is brave is hyper analytical, typically is hyper analytical. They're really analyzing all of their constraints, and they're looking at all the data points, and they've got their budget down pat. Mm-hmm. And they get to that point where they're like, okay, the numbers or the environment or my relationships tell me now is the time. Let's do this. It's ready. So there's this, it's not the crazy wild roller coaster that everyone thinks that it is. It's actually very boring and highly practiced, and small, minute little actions add up.
Yeah. And the fact that you say that's what it is, from your own understanding, from the people that you've interviewed. I mean, I look back at, that 1 week where I think some of the people on my show know this, and I'm not sure if you know this, Emily, but I had this 1 week where I call it the week from hell, where I called off my wedding, and 2 days later, I quit my corporate job of 8 years. And then 3 days after that, I fired my first virtual assistant. And you say this is like, all the brave people don't think they're actually being brave. And I didn't think I'm being brave. I'm just like, this is what needs to happen. I mean, it's crazy.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that happens. So that's one of the things that happens when you're being brave. You're either really hyper analytically taking action, tiny baby steps, or a situation is being forced upon you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm sure that in that week from hell, there was a lot of situations where there are a lot of constraints breathing down your neck, and you had to say, okay, I can't do these 4 things, but I can do these 5 things. And I feel most comfortable doing this step first.
Exactly. And then from there, it kind of feels like a snowball effect, because then like if I could be honest, it's like, after I left the relationship, I spent some time dealing with the grief. And then I'm like, well, now that that's gone, I mean, like, why am I in my corporate job? I don't need this corporate job. It's not serving me. And then, I got this side business building up and it's going well. So I might as well go in with it right now, because there's no other time. There is no other time right now.
It's true. It's very similar to, like, if you sit still in one place for a really long time, there's going to be a muscle. I don't really care which one, but there will be a muscle that is begging you to move. Like just begging you to move. And the second you move that one muscle, then the rest of your muscles start going, oh, yeah, move that one. And then this one. And then before you know it, you're having a dance party. So it starts with the small movements. It always does. And, you know, to a neighbor looking in on your dance party, they think you're crazy, but they didn't know you were like sitting very, very still just 10 minutes ago, you know?
So. I love the fact that you mentioned this, that it's the bravery is not something that's just huge and appears out of nowhere. It's like almost months, it's almost years in the making of it.
It's true. It's very much a lifestyle. It's not a thing you wake up and choose to just be brave. I mean, I think one of my missions, many missions, is to share with people that the bravery already exists within you. Like the courage and the creativity is already there. It's up to us to practice it in order to be good stewards of it, in order to be responsible with the bravery that we are given when we're born. And I think it's a lot. It's very, very similar to learning an instrument. In that sense, that, you know, like everyone is born with the capacity to be artistic and instrumental and musical, but it's really up to us to practice our instruments and practice our skills and become masters of them, and it is definitely not overnight.
Oh, I love it. And this is what I love the most in this show, is when I can bring people just like you to bring up that, you know, whatever it is, any type of success in any of the 5 areas that we talk about here, is that it's never an overnight success. It's always something that's been worked on for so long, and we just don't see it. We only see the very peaks of it. And the question I have for you, Emily, is that, you know, so if you're doing a podcast show and talking about bravery, how do you actually find these people who are, you know, what you call brave to interview?
That's a good question. So I have a lot of brave people in my life, and I actually just started the show by making a list. I went on Facebook and I looked at all of my Facebook friends, and I just said, you know what, that person has an awesome story. You know what, that person has a really cool story. Or this person, I know they don't think they're brave, but I do. I think they're brave. I want to talk to those people. So it started from me. Like, it started with all of my own personal contacts. And as I was going, I kept asking each of my guests to suggest somebody else who they thought was brave, you know, pay it forward. And the stories have just kept snowballing. Similarly to that creative courage spiral, the stories have just kept coming in, and it's been really fantastic. You know, and one thing that I really try to do in the show is it's not this like, look at me, look what I've done kind of show. It's definitely this was my story. This is what was behind all of the good stuff that you might see on the outside. This is all the pain. This is all the struggle. This is all of the big ups and downs and emotional swings that happened before I got to the place that you see me now. I don't think that those stories are talked about enough, and that's one of the reasons why the show exists.
It's beautiful, and I love that. It's important that we highlight those struggles and the pains, as well as what it results into. You know, it's that persistence, that resilience to keep going. And so, you know, share with us, Emily, as we start wrapping up the show here, is share with us one of the really big stories or one of the big standout moments that you've had so far interviewing these brave people that just stick with you and go, wow, I really learned a lot through not just what they shared, but now about myself as I reflect upon that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had some really fantastic guests so far, from all over the world too. Which has been really, really, I mean, what an honor to talk with a global guest base and also a global audience base. It's been really, really fantastic. I think some of the ones that stick out to me, I mean, one of my good singer-songwriters songwriter friends is Naomi Washira, and she's from Kenya, and she's the very first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And her story is really, really fascinating. Really just, I mean, all the way through is just little brave moments. Every single step of her way has been really brave.
Mm-hmm.
She moved to the States when she was 18, 19. And that alone is brave. For moving to a foreign country is brave for me.
Yeah.
And she's, not everybody chooses to become a singer-songwriter. And even more so, not everyone chooses to be a singer-songwriter after they find out that they are going to be a single mom. And that's just a really, that floors me every time I think about that. And we've also had an interview with Dr. Chris Friesen, who's a neuropsychologist, and he wrote a couple books on achieving and being successful. And he has a really fantastic episode where we just talk about what do you do when you have those dark moments and you have like the bathroom floor moments where, like you are entertaining or trying to ward off all of these negative thoughts. What do you do with them?
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated his expertise in all of that, because what he told us was that it's okay to have these negative thoughts, these dark thoughts, and that if you fight them off, it only makes it worse. And a lot of people use the positivity, just be positive, and that actually works against you. And so it's okay to have the dark thoughts, and it's okay to give them a place and to give them a time and space to breathe.
And I really want to say this, Emily, is that I'm really glad you bring that up, because so often, like you say, we just flood things with positivity, especially if you're in this personal development space. It's just like, I can't feel bad right now. I got to feel good and happy and be grateful and all this other stuff. But like, if you just come out of a relationship, if you just lost your job, if you just lost a huge investment, you're allowed to feel crap and shit for however long.
Exactly.
But the question is, how long do you want to play there? You can play there for a few days, or you can play there for months and years, like some people.
Exactly.
Right. So,
I really do. I have a really strong nihilist streak in me, and I am definitely of this like, oh, the world's coming to an end. We're all screwed. There's definitely a strong streak of that in me, but there's also this really strong streak of, there must be some reason for it. And I think that one of the best ways to get through that, like wallowing in the darkness, is to start to ask yourself, oh, I'm feeling really shitty. Why am I feeling shitty? Not just what was the source of it or what was the trigger of it, but what is the ultimate purpose of me feeling shitty right now? What am I going to do with it?
I love it. I love it. Especially that second part just then, right? What am I going to do with it? And this ties in with what I tell some of my coaching clients is like, what's the story does this mean? What does this mean when you feel shitty? Does it mean that you're saying you're not good enough, that you suck and you're horrible and you're this and that? Or what else does it actually mean? Right?
And sometimes it means nothing. Sometimes it just means that you had too much sugar that day. Like sometimes it just means that you're thirsty and you've got a headache and you're really pissy about something. And taking the time to acknowledge why you're feeling the fear allows you space to do something with the fear, not just to feel it and be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. Gotcha. It's amazing. Emily, I'm enjoying this conversation so much, but it hurts me that we got to start wrapping up the show here, right?
That's fine. It just gives us another reason to do this again sometime soon.
Exactly. Maybe we flip side it, right? I'll hop on over to your podcast and we can talk more about that side. But as we wrap up here, we go into what we call our quick fire questions round, Emily. And I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to start with my favorite question here on the show. It's our signature question. It's the time travel moment. Where, Emily, if you could go back to any moment in your life and you could talk to little Emily and you could give her one piece of advice, when would you go back to and what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry that this is the rapid fire section. When I was in high school, I had an eating disorder. So there were a slew of moments that I would have gone back to. I think that whole season, I could have just could just like close my eyes and pick a spot in that season. And I would have told my younger self that, that there is a reason why you are feeling this way. There is a reason why you have gone through what you're going through. And the best thing that you can do is to feel it all and to find a place to express yourself in all of it. I really do think that eventually that happened. You know, eventually I was able to find the outlet of expression, but the expression was the only thing that saved my life. Yeah.
Amazing share. Thank you for that. The next question I have, Emily, is I'm sure you've probably done a lot of reading in your life, probably even about bravery. And I want to ask you, like, if there's one book, right, that is a total must read for anyone here who wants to learn how to be a little bit braver for themselves, what would you recommend?
Well, my book when it comes out. But until then, in the meantime, I am like hands down such a big fan of Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way. It's a 12-week workbook, and it's all about creativity and artful living, and it's just phenomenal, everything of it. It's life-changing. So.
Awesome. We'll add that into the show notes. The next question I have here, Emily, and this is more directed to the men of the world, and I believe this, Emily, I believe that in recent time, in the modern world that we're living in, that the men aren't showing up as where they need to be, right? That women have taken a huge lead in that. The men haven't stepped up as much as women have in the last, 30, 40 years. And I want to ask you this, right? As a person who does interviews for people who are about bravery, like, what do you think men need to do most right now? What's the one thing they can start doing to step up into what the modern world needs them to be? And if it's bravery, how do they do that?
I don't think it's bravery. I think bravery is a symptom of what needs to happen. I think that, so what I know about bravery is those that are most brave feel the most vulnerable. And which is what makes you feel like you're not being brave, right? So the biggest thing that I think men in our world can do is to practice being vulnerable. But it does require that you do it in a smart way. I mean, you're not out there just crying on the street corner. You have to be vulnerable with yourself first, and then you slowly can open up in small baby step kind of ways. I think that's the biggest thing that men could do today.
I love it. And I want to ask you an additional question here in regards to that. So, like, when you say be vulnerable to yourself, what does that actually look like? Like, how does a man or a woman who's listening here actually learn how to be more vulnerable to themselves first?
Well, I mean, if you're going to be vulnerable with someone else, usually there's a high degree of honesty and authenticity. So I think when you're being vulnerable with yourself, it really entails not bullshitting yourself and not lying to yourself and being honest to yourself about the way that you're feeling, about the situations that you're going through, about how awful or wonderful your relationships are or your job is and all this stuff. You like hiding yourself from yourself is the opposite of that internal vulnerability.
I love that. I love the way you sum it up. It's amazing. And the final question I have here for you, Emily, and you probably answered it, but I want us to summarize and bring it back here so the fans can actually, take, if that's the one thing that they take away from this show is, how would you describe what true bravery mindset looks like?
Yeah. So bravery is this combination of what I already mentioned, the honesty level, is acknowledging your constraints. That's the second thing. The third thing is acting intuitively. And the fourth thing is in entertaining an imagination and a sense of possibility. So you have this action step, you have a possibility and an optimism step, you have a reality step, and the authenticity factor. Yeah, those four things create a really great Venn diagram of bravery.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Amazing, Emily. So this has been such an amazing chat. I've been loving so much about that and learning how bravery actually really works, and, you know, just distilling it all down to just, you know, basically the brave don't feel brave at all.
It's true. It's
so
true.
Amazing. And so,
which is one of the reasons why I titled the podcast Bare Naked Bravery.
Yeah.
Because that's how it feels.
I love it. I love it. And so, Emily, for the people who want to learn more about yourself and catch more about your show, where's the best place they can go find it?
Just go to barenakedbravery.com.
Awesome.
That's the easiest place.
Awesome, Emily. And so as we wrap up the show here, was there anything else, Emily, you wanted to share on this show that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
It is just such an honor to be here. And I know that there's a lot that you can be doing and listening to on the internet. And those of you that are listening right now, I want to thank you for tuning in and choosing Richard and I's conversation. It means a lot that you chose to spend some of your day with us. It really does.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you for being on this show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, guys. So this wraps up another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Here today with Emily Ann Peterson from Bare Naked Bravery. Make sure you tune into her show because it's going to share even more in-depth information about bravery. And I know one thing. I know this. I'm going to be vulnerable here for a moment, and I'm going to speak this on behalf of myself and Emily, that we don't want this show to be hidden. We don't need this show to be a secret gem anymore. This needs to go out there. So please head on over to iTunes to rate the show so that we can get Emily's message out there, and we can get all the other guests on this show, their message out there too. And of course, you can head on over to richardfood.com to grab all the resources that Emily has shared here on the show. And remember to go out there, go live with love, guys, and go smash it. And I'll see you again in the next one.